this morning comes from the book of Revelations, 3rd chapter, 14 through 22. You'll find it at 1289 in your Pew Bible. To the angel of the church in Laodicea, write, these words are the words of Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or other. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich. I have acquired wealth and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in fire, so you can become rich, and white clothes you wear. You can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes, so that you may see. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they with me. To the one who is victorious, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And now I give you our Pastor James.
Well, good morning. Many of you know I have a lot of stories, and many of you heard this story about this crazy farmer that I worked for in Kansas, who is hands down the most difficult person that I've ever worked for in my life, and I've worked for some really difficult people. He was mean and impatient. He would make my blood boil anytime I saw that he was walking toward me. And working on the farm was really a lot different for me. I was from the construction world, and so it was a world every bit as complex, every bit as dangerous, but everything was different. And there were these new experiences, and there were new dangers that I didn't necessarily anticipate. And one day, one of the workers for this farmer had me go into a grain bin on a very hot day, which I had no experience with that. But there's federal laws about how long you can spend in a grain bin on a hot day, and the laws are there for a reason. And I had no idea. So I was down in this, basically an oven. It was dark, it was hot. I was working at the bottom of a shovel, working furiously to get all the stuff cleaned out of it. And I was down there for like 3.5 hours before I started to notice that I felt a little woozy, that I felt a little weak, that I started to vomit. And it was really, really uncomfortable. And the guy who sent me down there had to kind of help me back out and sit me down and give me some water, because I was having heat stroke. And I had no idea. You know, as a construction worker, I've spent many summers working outside, and I was used to telling myself, yeah, it's hot, but you're just being a pansy, you know, keep working. You're going to get through it. But sometimes that sentiment, that pride maybe of doing that can actually put you in a dangerous situation. You know, sometimes the church, I think, can be working furiously, doing things that it really shouldn't be doing. You get caught up and consumed in busyness, and all for things that don't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. Things that put the wrong priorities over people and end up doing way more harm than good. This church in Laodicea was kind of in the middle of two different towns. It was by some hot springs. So they had the situation where one town over had hot springs, and the other town over the other way had cold water. And so they were stuck in the middle. And the aqueduct that brought the water to their city brought this kind of wretched, lukewarm water that wasn't really useful. It wasn't very appetizing. It was kind of the thing about their city that they were ashamed Lukewarm water is not very useful. It's not very pleasing to the mouth. It's a breeding ground for germs. That's why our natural reaction is to just spit it right back out. And I think it's easy to interpret these words about being hot or cold, about being about passion. You know, about how passionate we should be about God and our relationship with God. I've heard sermons that talk about that. That our passion should be boiling up. That we should either be on fire for Jesus, so to speak, or that we should be cold for Jesus and out of God's way. It's better to do that than it is to be kind of apathetic and lukewarm. But that's really not what this passage is about at all. This is really God's value judgment on what the work of the church has been doing in Laodicea. In a healthy church, the work that's being done is useful to God. It's being obedient to what God is calling us to do. But in Laodicea, the wealthiest of all the churches that were mentioned in the book of Revelation, the church had stopped trusting in God and started trusting in their wealth. They had started trusting too much in themselves. And in the safety and security of their wealth, their priorities were getting all screwed up. And the work that they were doing was not valuable. It was out of step with God's heart. It was out of step with being witnesses and living faithfully into that. Michael Gorman, one of these wonderful scholars from the book of Revelation that I've been reading, thinks that we as Americans should read the book of Revelation as if we are the church of Laodicea, that church is the one that's the closest to where we're at spiritually. And when we read these letters to the seven churches, that is through this Laodicean lens of feeling safe and secure behind our wealth, that we should take a hard look at the effectiveness of what we're doing, about the things that God has called us to do, things like being witnesses, things like making disciples. Over at our house, we had a group, a bunch of young adults came, and we had a really difficult conversation about this recently. It was a really hard conversation for me to have. I felt frustrated. I felt like I was failing these young adults in our church, like I was losing them. And many knew that I cared for them, or could see maybe that I cared for them. They just didn't feel like a lot of you cared for them. I'm sure some of you cared for them. But they just didn't feel like they could see that, like they needed to see that in their life. They could see the hands of the body reaching out to them when they walked away or when they were going through a hard time. Some felt that the church was too focused on stained glass windows, and remember the time when people fought about stained glass windows the time before I came here. You know, some thought about the flowers, and I know the history of the flowers in the church, and the table decorations, and some of those things seem more important than being the church and doing what God has called us to do. We're fighting about what kind of worship music it is that we like and prefer, and how it's played, and how it's brought into life and worship. And this stuff isn't easy to hear. I mean, it broke my heart to hear it. And I hope it breaks your heart too, because we can't just be a church of two different groups of people, the old people and the young people. We have to really be connected to be the body of Christ. This stuff isn't easy to hear, but it needs to be said. You know, tradition is the memory of community, and some of the young adults didn't feel like they had permission to make some new traditions, to engage in this memory of our community. That we might just do the same things for 20 years that we've been doing for the last 20, and it didn't matter what they said, that's what we were going to do anyway. They felt burned by promises of change and lack of follow-through, and some of that's my fault. They felt burned by how many people complained about when they heard a guitar in church. Or really when they tried to make differences and changes that would help us to reach out to young people like them. And you know what? I think they're right. God wants disciples, not decorations. God wants a church that's equipped and effective at showing love across generational lines. God wants a church that's interested in building deep relationships. Not just where we say hi and talk about the weather and say we'll see you next week, but where we actually live together and know one another and show the love of Christ and share the love of Christ together. You know, hospitality isn't about the environment. It's not about the placemats. It's not about the music. It's not about the flowers. It's about people knowing that they matter, that we care about them. And I think Gorman is right. We in America are like the church of Laodicea. We have our wealth, and it gives us an unhealthy sense of entitlement. And it's often a barrier to feeling as though we need to trust in God. We just do whatever we can on our own power and just kind of coast. Colin Saxton came and visited us, and I got to spend some time with him. And he said that what he wants to see as he travels around all these different churches that he is over is a church that has a vision for being effective and just doing the Lord's work. That's what he wants to see. But often what he sees in all the churches that he travels around is people who might as well be saying, I just want the church to be around long enough to do my funeral. It's a pretty disheartening thing to think about. You know, the church is supposed to be a family. It's supposed to be a place where people are accepted and recognized and loved. And we're to be like brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers. That's what we're supposed to be, the family of God. We're bound together in love and service and mutual sacrifice to the kingdom of God. But I think sometimes we seldom take a look at the usefulness of what we do and the ends that God has in mind. And friends have long pointed out that equality with God is something that we use as a way of showing people the gospel, as a way of living out that the gospel is at work in our lives. But why does it seem sometimes like the powerful? And you might be surprised to find that you are counted among the powerful if you have time and money and are willing to show up. That the powerful are the ones that get their way. It's certainly easier that way, and then there's certainly a reward for showing up and participating in church, and I don't want to undermine that. But love calls us to the work of using our power to empower others. We use our power to push away those who do things that we don't like, that they don't share our what we think music should sound like, vision. They don't share our vision of what Sunday school could look like or what outreach could look like. Perhaps we should be careful what we're wishing for, because that's a sign of misplaced priorities. You might have a church that lasts long enough to do your funeral, but I should want more than that. But the church doesn't exist for its own sake. It exists to serve and seek and find and help God equip others. It exists to be effective, to offer something valuable to the world. And Jesus is essentially saying that this church in Laodicea has wrong priorities. He says you may think that you're wealthy. You may feel like you don't need a thing, but you're really wretched and blind and poor. If we truly want what God wants in our life, we have to be willing to accept that on grace. We have to be willing to accept God's love. But we also need to hear the words of Jesus here in this passage that say, to those I love, I rebuke and discipline. God calls the church to repent of its misplaced priorities, to let the things that don't matter truly slide and focus on building the kingdom of God. We need to sometimes discard the old wineskins that God can't use anymore. Not that I'm calling you old wineskins. I'm just saying that sometimes there's things that just aren't a part of the new plan that God has. They're not a part of what God is up to now. We have to lay things down to keep our focus on the right things. God's desire for us is not that we become comfortable, it's that we become thirsty. It's that we thirst for the right things and get our thirst filled by doing the right things that God is calling us to do, the things that God finds useful. And the Laodiceans had been getting their thirst quenched for the other things so long that they had forgotten the things that God brought to them. And I think we all have this tendency to be people who crawl around in the muck and the mire, who like to sit in it sometimes and just enjoy that space of being alone, that space of being dirty and warm and seemingly happy. But God offers us living water. He offers us His Holy Spirit, and He offers us a chance to be satisfied doing what we were made to do. John alludes to the prophetic invitation of Isaiah in chapter 55, where he says, come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money, without cost. God offers us really valuable things. God offers us a life with Him. God offers us salvation and reconciliation and redemption. He wants us to be useful. He wants that living water welling up with us to quench the thirsty world around us. He offers us something that's valuable, that is meaningful. He offers us something worth living and dying for. He offers us an adventure to be lived. But he offers this first to those who would be earnest and repent. We can't simply be wayward and torn and comfortable in that space. We have to be broken and torn. We have to be recognizing our need for a Savior and how much farther we have to go. There's a Christian activist that I really admire. He's kind of a hippie guy. He's a peace activist. His name's Shane Claiborne. And I remember reading a story about how he took a year off of college to go work with Mother Teresa in Calcutta. He worked among a leper colony for a year. And you notice that the lepers wore these wooden shoes, that they were really ugly wooden shoes. And they made him a pair of those shoes. But one thing that he learned about leprosy that he didn't know before was that leprosy was actually a painless disease. We think about leprosy and we think about these horrific images of people who look mangled and disfigured, and we think about leprosy as if it's a painful, horrible, plaguing disease, but it's actually a painless disease. And the thing that makes people look horribly disfigured isn't the disease itself, it's the treatment of the disease. Because where the leprosy is at work, the body is numb. And the treatment is to cut down, to cut away the numb parts that spread the disease throughout the body, to cut down into the place where there's feeling once again. They have to be recarved regularly. When Shane came back to America, the first thing that he noticed is that we tend to have a sort of spiritual leprosy, that we have this kind of numbness at work in us. Sometimes the only way that we can get through it is to have God cut away at things inside of us, things that keep us from feeling, that keep us from having a heart broken for the world, that keep us from that connection, that human connection that we crave. Rather than worrying about bringing Jesus into people's lives, we worry so much about what we look like on the outside. We worry about what people think about us. We put on masks and we keep people at a distance. I think we like that numbness sometimes. It's a good barrier that tends to look like we're safe. But really, it isn't a very good way to live. It's just a way to slowly die in painlessness. It's a way of dying in comfort. Instead of this picture of isolation, Jesus offers us intimacy. He offers a true relationship that's fulfilling, that's a two-way give-and-take thing. Jesus shows us this wonderful picture of, in John, it said, I stand at the door and knock. And in that famous painting, it's Jesus, the creator of the universe, who comes as a beggar. It's Jesus who comes like one who is naked and poor. Last week, we looked at the Church of Philadelphia and talked about this open door that God has for us. And here we see that there's also there's this open door that's wide open, this big plan that God has for us and this role that we play as the church, but there's also this little door that we have the power to shut. The part where we get to say no and God lets us. But God has a great door open to us all. And he stands right outside that door to our hearts. And he can't wait to show us what's out there beyond ourselves, what's out there beyond the numbness that we have and that isolation that we have. That the best is yet to come in a life with him. The Church of Laodicea was complacent, and their power and their privilege had made them numb to Jesus, blind that he was out there waiting for them, waiting to invite him back in to be with them, waiting for them to see that the riches had distracted them from sitting on the throne with Jesus, the very highest exalted place in the whole universe. And most of the churches in Revelation have like kind of a message that contains a little good, a little bad. Some of them have just nothing but good news. But the Church of Laodicea is the only one where Jesus can't find anything good to say. But even to a church whose deeds don't line up with the truth of the gospel, even to a church that Jesus can't find one single good thing to point his finger at, Jesus still shows grace. He still waits there outside that door for our hearts to turn back to him. He still hopes that we repent and start again living the path of our calling to be the church. And in some ways, that's really the choice before all of us. We can look at the church with a critical eye and we can cast the first stone. We can point out its problems and use that as a justification to give up on the path that God has placed before us. or we can look at the church with a critical eye and see how it can be effective again. This is the path that we need to change here, to be living the gospel once again. It's clear that God wants more than just complainers. He wants people who are actually going to act, people who are actually going to work toward change. And God wants people who aren't afraid to be a bull in the china shop for his glory, if that's what it takes. God wants people who are willing to get real, to offer themselves in service and sacrifice, even heroism, to help the church be what it was meant to be. You know, I love the church. I was a heroin addict. I enjoy the people who loved me, who reached out to me, who kind of loved me into the kingdom, who helped introduce me to the truth of God, who helped introduce me to the love that God has for me, and introduced me as a stranger to God, to this wonderful God that we know and love. The church has this wonderful role to play as witnesses in the great war of the Lamb that we see in the pages of the book of Revelation. And we can be the hands and feet of Jesus that bind up a broken world, or we can be something else. Yaroslav Pelikan, this great church historian, said that tradition is the living faith of the dead. Traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. And I suppose I should add, he says, it is traditionalism that gives tradition such a bad name. I think the world is hungry for more than traditionalism as the living faith of the dead. People need to really see their need for Jesus. They need to see that we care for them, that we love them. They don't care if the pipe organ gets played once a month. They don't really care whether there's fresh flowers every week. As much as I love the story, and I love Martina, and I love that she dedicated so much of her life to offering up flowers every week, that is not what people who need Jesus really care about. It's not about us, it's about them. It's about changing our priorities upside down. It's not about what we like, it's about what the world needs. And I think the world is hungry for this Quaker understanding of God, this Quaker faith that's a living faith that we're known for. We need to take a fresh look at how we practice our faith and at the hills of tradition that are really worth dying on. Because it matters more and more every day. Whether we're going to make the changes that will make us bridge builders and witnesses and disciple makers, or whether we want to polish the brass on the Titanic, choke out the faith of young people. We're losing hope that the church will ever see them as equals, will ever support them as they find their way. We have a choice. We can unify, we can put through the efforts to truly be one body. We can let what needs to be hot and what needs to be cold, or we can be a church that offers tepid mediocrity to the world. We can make the changes so that our community and our witness can be valuable, something that we offer that's worthy of God. And so I guess the choice is up to you and it's up to me. Will we major in the little things? Will we be the kind of church that has the big picture of God in mind? It's probably going to be messy either way, so we might as well make a mess going the right way, right? The way I see it, I didn't come here to bury a dying church. I came here to help God touch people's lives. And I hope that you came here for that reason too. I want to see God's work in people's lives. I want to see people powerfully introduced to this fellowship of Jesus. I want to see lives change. That's the standard of everything that we should do here. If we can't see how what we're doing fits into that, then why are we doing it? That's really the main thing. So I ask you, do you have this kind of vision? And how do you see yourself fitting into this kind of vision of reaching out with the love of God to a hurting world? Because the world needs it more than ever. I want us to go into a time of open worship, and I want you to hopefully just let God's Spirit work in your spirit. Let God lead you and help you to see what are we valuing here? What is it that we're doing here? What is it that we're offering to the world? Because what we offer needs to be valuable. It needs to be relevant. It needs to meet people where they're at in hospitality. It can't just be the same thing we've always done forever. So listen for God's leading, and if you feel led to share, stand and